Sure. There's a lot of stuff that we don't know about what's going on behind closed doors right now with the Arizona Cardinals head coaching search. One thing we do know unequivocally, they have no control over the outcome. Let's discuss.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And Locked On Cardinals, Alex Clancy here. Thanks for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast platform. Listen, man, we still don't know what the hell's going on. We kind of do. We know what isn't happening. We know what isn't happening, which we'll talk about throughout the first couple segments. Does this mean Vance Joseph is still in play? I know it sounds crazy. I know his name hasn't been around. Let's just chat. We'll do that in the final segment. What does all this scheduling mean? Mike LaFleur was here for a couple days, left without an offer. Now the Cardinals are meeting in the Super Bowl area, or I believe in Seattle, to meet with Klint Kubiak, as are the Raiders. What does the scheduling mean? And is it just, well, this was the first time you could get in front of Klint Kubiak? Why is Klint Kubiak still being discussed? There's one thing, regardless of who you'd like the Cardinals to hire, regardless of if you think it's already burned and the smoke is billowing to the moon and there's no positivity around, or if you think that the Cardinals are going to find their diamond in the rough that's going to be able to lead them into this next chapter away from 3-14 and hopefully with more wins than losses each season. Regardless of what you think, there's one thing that is 100% abundantly clear. The Cardinals continue to not be able to direct and control their own fate. Other organizations go out and get what they want. They take what they want, obviously with, agreeance from the person to be the next head coach. And I'm not even talking about just the head coaching search. What did I talk about this season, last season, the season before? You see during games, the Arizona Cardinals are always being reactive instead of proactive. Always reacting to what other teams are doing well, as opposed to forcing them off their kilter and off their game plan by willing this team to force other teams to adjust. The Cardinals are always the team that adjusts. Always. And we're continuing to see that spill into the offseason, in a very important offseason, like anyone is when you're looking for a head coach. And the Cardinals are alone at a bar at 1:55 a.m. The Cardinals are playing with the Raiders with one chair of musical chairs left. And the problem is, what seems like the Cardinals have 25 to 50 pound weights and a blindfold on while they're ringing around the rosy of that final chair, and the Raiders are sitting there with plain eyesight. Kind of a rudimentary metaphor to say the Cardinals are out of control of any of this. And while this could seem obvious, I think everything changed when it just got down to 2. Even with Cleveland, there's a charm to Cleveland. There's a charm to the dog pound and playing in bad weather and the fan base being so rabid and all of those things, that when it got down to 2, you kind of had to reset. It's like, okay, there's 10 openings. There's John Harbaugh. There's Jesse Minter. There's other guys, like top flight guys, Mike Tomlin. There's guys, Kevin Stefanski more, because Mike Tomlin still hasn't even done anything. Where it's like, okay, the Cardinals probably aren't going to get those guys. Situation, money, whatever it is. But then when Robert Saleh goes to Tennessee, Todd Monken goes to Cleveland, Miami gets their guy, Stefanski went early. Now it's like you have to completely recalibrate. You're in a completely different world than you were in 3 weeks ago, where it's like, okay, there's one other organization. They're not functional. They have the #1 overall pick. They've got $100 million to spend, but the Cardinals have the better roster. If you put roster to roster and you do a blind taste test, a blindfold test, you're picking the Cardinals 8 times out of 10. 10 GMs, 8 of them were picking the Cardinals. The roster's too good. But with the Mike LaFleur thing, that was the first real recalibrated red flag. Whereas before, it's yeah, okay, Robert Saleh's going to interview here. I thought he'd be a good fit, but he was on the fringe of being gettable, and gettable was probably very loose definition-wise anyways. So when you recalibrate, I promise I won't say recalibrate again after that one, because I was just saying it, and then I just said it again, but that's it. After this reset, then you have to look at it with fresh eyes. Okay, so there's 2 left. The Cardinals went, interviewed Mike LaFleur. The Cleveland job got filled yesterday. So it's okay, now what? The first big red flag for this next iteration here is that Mike LaFleur left without a signed deal. So that can mean a couple different things. 1, the Cardinals couldn't close, which you would think was probably the case. 2, Mike LaFleur was weighing his options and interviewing elsewhere. There's only one other place to interview, and there have been 0 ties from Mike LaFleur to the Raiders. And 3, it's kind of after a first day, it's all right, well, we've got each other's numbers. Maybe we'll meet up at some point. Maybe we'll hang out again. All of those are out of the Cardinals' control. Now you enter Klint Kubiak into the situation where it's oh, that's fun. Let's spring this up at the last minute when Mike LaFleur didn't work. And now it's the Cardinals are starting a marathon from the starting gate, and the Raiders are 24.2 miles in. They can taste the finish line. They've been doing this already. So when you're late to the ball here, not only do you have all the Raiders' momentum going against you, but also you have no real foot to stand on where it's hey, why weren't you approaching me? Why weren't we doing this earlier? And again, I know the playoff schedule has something to do with it. I completely understand that. There's a reason why Klint Kubiak's the odds-on favorite to be the Raiders head coach, like he's been, and people had forgot that Arizona didn't even wanted to talk to him. So, of course, there's things we don't know. Of course, there are insiders who say things and say other things and, short list, long list, whatever it is. Klint Kubiak was not on the short list. So now the Cardinals are in a situation where it's what happens if they lose musical chairs? I'll talk about that in the final segment. Do you call up Raheem Morris, be hey, dude, just kidding. Do you want to be the head coach? You were our first choice the entire time. You want to call Jim Schwartz? He wants a head coaching job. Hey, Jimbo, you want to be a head coach? You were the dark horse for us the entire time. There's no contingency plan when you have no control over what's going on. And obviously, every organization only has so much control with the free will that their interviewees have. Okay? But it's not even a stigma. It's a root of the organization. Always reactionary, never proactive to a point where you can paint a good enough picture abstractly and concretely with dollar signs to coerce a candidate to choose the Cardinals over somebody else, over some other organization. I know, and I said this, that the Cardinals it was the least attractive spot. Okay, when this whole thing started, that was weeks ago. Now, when it's just the Raiders and the Cardinals, you put those under a microscope, it's not that far off. The Raiders have $65 million more to spend ballpark this offseason than the Cardinals do. They have the number 1 overall pick. And I said this yesterday. If Fernando Mendoza is not Klint Kubiak's guy, that could be the real shift in taking the Cardinals job, as rudimentary as that would seem to the naked eye. But if he's you know what? I don't see this as a guy I can develop. I like Brock Bowers. I like Ashton Genty. You've got a couple good defensive pieces. The Cardinals are much more ready to rip, irrespective of their quarterback position. And I'm not even talking about Kyler Murray. We were having conversations on Twitter about Kyler Murray. It's I'm talking about Jacoby Brissett. I don't think Kyler Murray is playing it down again. So I don't think that should have anything to do with the equation. But by and large, and mostly, 99%, it looks like the Cardinals have absolutely no control of the situation, and they will take what is left. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. What could this scheduling stuff mean, though, kind of more in depth? I know there's a lot of nuance because of the playoffs and everything like that. We'll break that down a little bit next. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by Rocket Money. I have an issue with not canceling subscriptions. Okay. Managing your finances can feel overwhelming. True. Between subscriptions you forgot about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where your money actually goes each month, it's easy to feel like you're losing control. And who has time to track every transaction to hunt down hidden fees? That's where Rocket Money comes in, the personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. I was shocked when they found that I had 2 Hulu subscriptions. It's crazy. I felt like a dummy. They found it very, very quickly. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNFL. That's rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNFL. rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNFL. Today's episode of Locked On Cardinals is also brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online, and they handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local tax expert for just $150 all in if a TurboTax expert didn't do your taxes last year. Just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get your life back. Get back to your life even. Visit TurboTax.com/lockedon to book your appointment today. Please go to the YouTube channel, search Locked In Arizona Cardinals, hit that subscribe button, man. You know the drill. Join the Everydayers Club. People are moving over from the Insider program that we're pivoting to a much bigger, broader, much more fun platform. There's members-only Discord, ad-free audio content, the podcast. Content equals the podcast. The link is in the description. Check it out. I was mentioning with a handful of people who were migrating over from the Insider program yesterday. Say what's up in the Locked On Cardinals Discord channel. Let's start a conversation, man. What better time than now? The Cardinals have no control. Does the scheduling mean anything? This is the next question. Why was Mike LaFleur here for 2 days? I know he wanted to do the wine and dine with no appies, no wine, no Camus. No Camus for you, Mr. LaFleur. Sorry. Was there for 2 days without a deal. Was it their plan the entire time to interview Klint Kubiak this weekend where the Raiders are, or did they piggyback on that meeting? They're like, hey, Mr. Davis, I got a jet. You got a jet. Let's meet in Seattle for some coffee and, go down to Pike's Place. I got a jet. You got a jet. That's probably the only comparison that Mark Davis and Michael Bidwell have. Listen, there has been conflicting reports. Okay. So there's great names. Diana Rossini has knocked it out of the park this cycle. Schefter obviously does a great job. We've got a couple local people who have, had quote sources, whoever those people may be. But it was interesting when Tony Pauline tweeted out yesterday, another, very established national media NFL presence, said they're going to meet with Klint Kubiak this weekend. It's like, that is more of a wrench thrown into this than I would have expected at this point in the cycle. This could mean a couple things. One, it's more pronounced and magnified because there's only 2 teams left. Do you think Cleveland wanted to interview? Like, it seems so out of left field. It seems only out of left field unless Michael LaFleur said no. Like, flat out, I'm good. Thank you. I'm good. I'm going to stay in LA. Thank you. I'm going to stay with Sean McVay. They were a muffed punt, which turned into points away from going to a Super Bowl this year. I'm good. Or, which is the weirdest one, which I find the furthest possible thing to happen, is Michael LaFleur is going to take the Raiders job, which I don't even know. I mean, I talk about the Cardinals every day. I don't talk about the Raiders every day. You can check out your boy Q over at Locked On Raiders for more info on that. But what if they did the switcherama and Klint Kubiak took the Cardinals job and Michael LaFleur took the Raiders job? I don't like, to be fair, if we're going to live in that world, we've got to live in every world at this point. This is Looney Tunes. This is 7 overtimes in a hockey playoff game at this point, 10 overtimes. We're on borrowed time here with this story. Unless Klint Kubiak sees Fernando Mendoza and says, I'm good. That's the only wild card. And this is not against the young man. Like, he looks like the dictionary definition of a perfect leader. Truly. He's grounded. He's mature. They won a bunch of games. He was clutch. All of it. He doesn't have the flash like you've seen from other number 1 overall picks. I'm not even talking about Kyler Murray. Just the prowess in college. Yes, they went undefeated. Yes, they won the national championship. And yes, they had a bunch of 5th and 6th year dudes playing against 19-year-olds also. So whatever you want to take into that is fine. Good for Indiana. What if Klint Kubiak says, I'm good? What if he doesn't want Fernando Mendoza? And Michael LaFleur does. That's the only thing that could cause me to think that there could be a switcherama ding dong. But the scheduling is precarious because the Cardinals are now not only without a safety net with their high wire act, but now they've got to do the high wire act while jumping on one leg. So if this is a Hail Mary to try and land Klint Kubiak because you got no other options outside of the next person I'm going to talk in the final segment, okay. But if Mike LaFleur said no, what makes you think Klint Kubiak will say yes? He's probably more expensive. So the one thing the Arizona Cardinals have going for them, and I think there's just one, is that there's no leverage play anymore. There's no leverage play. It's 2 teams. It could be for money, but you know that Michael Bidwell is going to be, the money is going to be the last. It's not. End of the month, my first smart thing of the month. You get it. I'm falling behind my quota the last couple months. The Arizona Cardinals will never be used as leverage for a money play. Let's just put it that way. Michael Bidwell is not going to flash a big number that Kubiak could take back to Mark Davis and be like, hey, look at what he gave me. Mark Davis is going to have to look in a magnifying glass like, that's not many zeros. Come to Vegas. It's fit. It's quarterback play. And listen, Jacoby Brissett's not the long-term guy, okay? But what's worse? Drafting a young quarterback who you're not sure on, if I'm using this as an example for Klint Kubiak, if he's not sold on Fernando Mendoza, that you're not sure on, that you are 100% tied to for at least 3 years, at least 3 seasons. And there's only one guy coming out that's going to be at the top. Like, what if he came out in 2027 draft? Where would he be ranked? I don't know. Genuinely, I don't. That's not rhetorical. What if it's better to take your Jacoby Brissett, leader of men, adult, started many games in the NFL, and then you look at 2027, you're like, okay, well, you re-sign Jacoby, you draft a rookie, and you go that way. You get 1 year of head coaching under your belt, 0 pressure. You get to know the ropes. You ingrain the offense into the team. Then you draft your guy. That's the only way, in my opinion, that Klint Kubiak will be calling the plays or calling the shots for the Arizona Cardinals next year. So the scheduling is weird because it's just a forced thing where the Cardinals really have no other option at this point. Unless they told Mike LaFleur, we're going to wait and talk to Klint and we'll let you know. I just find that very, very hard to believe. Is Vance Joseph still in play? If you say no, you're not seeing the big picture. You can think whatever you want, though. I'll never tell you what to think. We'll talk about it next. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by our friends over at Indeed. Listen, man, I use Indeed. I've used Indeed for a long time. And when it comes to, if you're a business owner, let's put it that way, and you've interviewed people, they look good on paper, but they weren't the right fit, you know how important it is to find the right guy or right gal. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites, where Indeed sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. Sponsored jobs boost your post to the people who are the best match for your role, and that makes a real difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored job posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help you give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about us on the podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Today's episode of Locked On Cardinals is also brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing better than being in an NBA arena, crowd, energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been as simple. And that's why Game Time has been the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs with the fans. Pulled up the Game Time app, picked an NBA upcoming game, and had tickets locked within a couple of minutes. The all-in price up front feature, where you see the ticket, you just click on it and be like, oh, are there going to be added fees? Is it going to be extra money at the end? Nope. The price you see is the price you pay. Being able to see the view from your seat before buying the tickets in a panoramic sense, incredible. You click on it like this, genuinely, and you could see the vantage point where that you'd be seeing before you buy the tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today, and remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. Okay. Vance Joseph has got to be in play somewhere. Contingency plan, like say they don't hire Mike LaFleur and say they don't hire Klint Kubiak. Then what? Then what? VJ coming home. I talked about this yesterday. It was actually a really interesting segment. I was texting my buddy about it after. Like, I feel like, just as a reset, I feel like when Vance Joseph was the leader in the clubhouse to get the Arizona Cardinals job a couple weeks ago, that was Michael Bidwell. And then this is slowly but surely Monty Ossenfort waning Michael Bidwell off of that idea into other names, and that's why he's not even on the list anymore. But if the list dissipates and the entire list get job elsewhere, Vance Joseph's coming back. It's just, I don't have inside information. I'm just reading what's happening. It's very rare that a name goes from being the leader in the clubhouse to non-existent. It's very rare. Like, what happens? Again, it's not like they gave up 40 points in the AFC Championship game. Like, nothing's changed. That defense was top 5 pretty much all year. Nothing's changed. So, why wouldn't he be in the background? Why wouldn't those conversations be whispered in the background with Michael Bidwell and Monty Ossenfort rolling his eyes? Why not? Now, I know their defensive pass coordinator took a DC role somewhere else. I know that Sean Payton fired the OC. Sean Payton is just, not a great look. Super sore loser after the AFC Championship game loss. Pointing fingers at everybody. But regardless of if I want, or if you want, or if the Cardinals want Vance Joseph on that list, Would you be surprised if he was the third name on the list outside of Mike LaFleur and Klint Kubiak, either one or two, whatever it is? Would you be surprised with him being the leader in the clubhouse a couple weeks ago and then vanishing? I wouldn't. So when you look at how the dominoes fell, when you look at the chronology of this entire mess of a process, the only constant for the majority of the time was Vance Joseph on that list. And then Diana Rossini came out with the quote-unquote 3 finalists. I respect everything they do. The national media, Schefter, all of them. I respect them all. I feel like they forget the Arizona Cardinals are an organization 90% of the year, and rightfully so. So when they're reporting at the end, it's like, come on, how hard are you trying here? How much information do you have? Because the Cardinals are like Fort Knox, just unbelievably still. So yeah, educated guesses, sure. That's what the majority of sports media as a whole is. And obviously they've got sources reporting things and doing a podcast and things like that are obviously different. I can't help but think that VJ's still around as the contingency plan. And I think it's one of those things where it's like, it's a win-win for him. And I'm not saying that he would, he wouldn't put his all into this or anything like that, but it's like, you can go back and be DC of one of the best defenses in the NFL. That's the worst thing that could happen. Or, I mean, to some, the worst thing that could happen is he takes the head coaching job of the Arizona Cardinals. Whatever it is, whatever flavor you want to get at the ice cream shop for that. What's the worst job? A DC of the top 5 defense or a head coach, one of 32? I'm sure he'd take the head coaching job. I'm just hard pressed to think that he's not still around somewhere. So when we talk about this entire show, obviously the Cardinals have zero control over what's going on. That's obvious. But even like what surprised me a little bit was when it chunked down to Cleveland, the Raiders, and the Cardinals, they still didn't have any control. Mike LaFleur left without an offer. Maybe they didn't make him an offer. I'm sure they did. Maybe that's TBD until they talk to Kubiak. Maybe it is. But if we're talking about the history of this team and coupling that with what happened last year, I still think that the Cardinals' job it's much closer to the Raiders' job than people say. Oh, they got Fernando Mendoza. Cool. $100 million. Cool. Perk. For sure. Unless that candidate doesn't want Fernando Mendoza. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Remember, without you, there is no me. I'll talk to you tomorrow, and then for my daily show, and then squad show, 4:00 tomorrow. Talk to you then.